So if all of you could go to this platform called menti.com. You can access it through your phone, through the device, whichever device you want. And let's get started on few questions while we wait for everyone to come on board, right? For the remaining people, because I think so. I'll start off. So all of you should actually see this on your screen, and once you log in, so you need to go to www.menti.com, and it'll ask you for a code, and then you can type in 666-30617, and just go ahead and keep punching in your responses. I have the first question up there, just to get a sense of who all we have today, and how much I can learn from all of you today, right? Because that's the intent today, rather than me doing a lot of talking. So I'll stop talking now, Uma, but I think I'll keep this up. So over to you.
Okay, that's great. Very nice way to keep our audience engaged. So it's almost 5 minutes past 11:30 here. So 5 minutes have exhausted. So let's now begin formally. Abhi, if it is okay with you. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So a very good morning and good noon to all the participants of this webinar. Myself, Uma, I'm from India, and I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. And I hope that your Sunday mornings or noons would be very well spent and usefully spent, because we have Abhinandan Mukherjee as a speaker today, and who would take us through this journey of OKRs and its utility in today's organization. So I'm sure most of you are well aware about Abhi, and he has been doing a lot of sessions now as a speaker on in the ASEAN HR community, and also elsewhere. But for those who are hearing him for the first time, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce him formally. So Abhinandan Mukherjee has been over 17 years of experience in various HR domain, and has been part of MNCs like Cognizant, World Bank, so on and so forth. Currently, he's an entrepreneur, although he chooses not to be called as an entrepreneur, and has co-founded When Empower, We and Empower group in Singapore and India, which focuses on capability development, technology, and transformation consulting in HR and related domains. So he's very passionate about what he is doing, and from that space, he has a mission to equip human resource professionals with future skills, preparing and helping them and enhancing their professional effectiveness. So this isn't just about what what Abhi is currently doing. Coming down to today's topic for discussion, which is OKR, I remember a few lines which I have tried, very quickly tried to eyeball John Doerr's book, Measure What Matters. And I quote from that book: early on in your career, when you are an individual contributor, you are graded on the volume and quality of your work. But one day, when all of a sudden you become a manager, let's assume everything goes well and you move up to manage more and more people, you are no longer paid for the amount of work you do, but paid for the quality of decisions you make. And that sets the context for today's discussion. Let's assume that we are all of us donning either of the CXO hats, and we are in a boardroom where we have a strategic HR partner with us or a consultant with us, and who would help us to know that how setting clear objectives, which is a very primordial step in any business strategy, and how do we complete that loop from objective setting to planning activities to moving forward towards key results, and thus coming back to see if I have met my objectives or not. Okay. So Abhi, are you okay to take the questions at the last, or you want to audience will be fine and they can ask you questions in between, whichever way you say.
Yeah, fine. So I think we'll keep it free flow. If someone wants to kind of
Okay.
pick up and please feel free. I think it's always good to have a conversational connect rather than me talking. I have a lot of
No
slides. Uma
problem.
didn't want so many, but I promise to keep it short so that
Great.
I would love to hear from others about their experiences in OKR. So thanks, Uma.
Yeah.
So I'll again bring up my screen maybe, and thanks Mary, Zul, Patrick, Uma, the core committee members of Asia HRM. I think with Asia HRM, it's been a great journey till now, 2020 onwards. So what do we see here on the screen? So mostly we have about HR professionals. So whoever joined a little late, I think in the chat box, I'll try and put in the code again. We would want you all to quickly go here and use whichever device you have handy. If you go to menti.com and punch in the code 6630617, it'll bring up a few questions. The responses is what we see on screen. And as you see, there's no login required, so it's completely anonymous. But it's good to see, the kind of people we have. I would move on to seniority level, not to judge anyone definitely, but to just ensure what kind of questions, I would be kind of be mindful of the questions that are coming my way and prepare accordingly. If you all could quickly help me understand, what's your seniority level in the organization you are in. Moving, so if you can just keep the responses coming in. Okay, I don't know if there's something that's not working, but I see, yeah, okay. So I'll keep this maybe, given the amount of time, I think we have these questions. Some of the responses that we see, I think is very important for us to evaluate or ask ourselves when we are in the OKR journey, right? We'll see later how OKR helps us getting from a vision to an execution, right? And so this is a question you can keep handy, but ensure that either during the session or at the end of the session, you go back and ask yourself or the organization or all of them saying, what's really my vision or what's really our vision, right, when it comes to an organization OKR. Yeah, so explore more on OKRs. Definitely, it's something that is coming up as a topic, as a area, as a goal setting framework, which is supposedly very, very uh, popular and successful in some large IT companies, and that's what we hear, right? I got a question in one of my previous sessions saying, "Do you think OKR can be applied only to an IT organization?" What I answered, I think I'll keep it for now. If any one of you have that question, please feel free to bring it up, and I have some responses to that. Yeah, great. Thank you for the responses, and I promise to kind of put these responses down, share it back as part of the deck, so that all of you have it handy, right? Any of you who want to kind of archive this for your later reference purposes. Moving on, I think I just have one more question which I want to bring up, saying, which statement do you think really applies best to you, right? And then I know I have some experts in the audience today, and I would take their help to really cover what is there in the session. For me, where am I in this three things? I am probably about 90% in the first statement at the bottom, saying I'm here to start the learning journey, because I definitely keep learning. I have learned about the OKRs. I'm a certified OKR coach. I'm not a certified coach. I'm a certified practitioner. So I can be OKR champion for organizations who are in their OKR journey. And wonderful. So we have people who have been implementing OKRs, and now what I'm trying to do is, like Uma said, I'm trying to bring in OKR in my company, and so with that, I think let the responses flow in. I'll quickly switch over to the deck that I have. Uh, Quick thing, thanks Uma for the introduction, but I think the simple journey that I am in is I just want to do something that I like doing, and in 2021, when I was kind of almost 5 years with the World Bank, I saw my role getting limited. That's where I moved on. Have been with the Asia HRM team for about 2 years. Amazing support for them. So I've done mostly around, like Uma said, techno-functional roles. In my last role, I was leading the compensation, benefits, and insurance administration team for the World Bank. Um, so let's start off with saying what are really OKRs, right? And I think with OKRs, it's important for us to understand things like very common question that we keep getting is OKRs versus KPIs, OKRs versus performance management. So let's think through, right? And some of these slides that you see here are from the learnings that I've had. You would find the acknowledgement and the source of most of the slides, unless I've picked it from the generic web search. There's no content that is my own, right? Most of this content is actually from the organizations who are training or certification companies, right? So coming back to OKRs, right? So OKRs typically, in plain and simple language, is a goal setting framework, right? So we saw that we have a lot of HR professionals in the audience today, right? And for anyone for that matter, a goal setting is something that we do almost at any level, starting from my personal fitness goals to organizational goals, uh, large organization goals, multi-year goals. It's basically OKR helps us setting goals, right? For the vision that we have. And as you all know, OKR, if we expand the term, it's objectives and key results, right? So let's think through. So it's basically where it's a thinking framework, and that's how Fitbots defines OKR. Fitbots is again a training academy for OKR in Asia. They are one of the largest ones in Asia. So it's a thinking framework which definitely follows a discipline, right? So we will see later that OKR has a lot of flexibility, agility in it, but it doesn't mean that there's no framework or a structure. So it's about getting everyone together and focusing on the efforts that are most important, right? And at any point in time, it takes the organization or company forward, right? So OKRs are always aligned to the strategic OKRs. So OKRs have a hierarchy. It goes down to the department, to the team, or if you have business units and then departments and teams, it all goes down to that level. But it, at the end of the day, is definitely linked to the organization or business strategies. So if you see why critical thinking framework, because I have a few reference videos which I'll share with all of you, the links. It's very important. John Doerr, who's definitely the one of the most important proponents of OKR, he says that most of the times, right, we get the objectives wrong, and that's where organizations have failed. Most of the reasons why organizations have failed is that they consider wrong objectives, and as a result, they and why do they do that? Because they don't ask the right questions. Is the assessment that he has. There's ongoing discipline, because you cannot forget it. It's not a part-time good to do thing in an organization. uh, in a different session we can have the actual implementation of OKR, because it's a large concept, and there's no right or wrong as we speak, right? There are things that organizations have done to succeed, but there are a lot of failure stories as well. All right. And I've been part of those sessions where I've heard professionals saying why OKRs failed. And I think it's important that we pick up what is most important, right? So focus on the most important things. It's important, and then the results have to show progress, right? Now, having said all of this in our minds, when we are HR professionals, it obviously comes back to saying, uh, if we measure, then how is there a reward attached to it? Again, going back to the question of performance management KPI, we would see what are the recommendations from the best practices across. So these are some of the books that we can pick up. Again, I'll leave the names in the slide so that when you get it, we will be able to pick these up and read them, right? So John Doerr, like you see, he was the first person who implemented this in Google. So I think we have a question there. Let me pick it up. Is OKR similar to strategy map BSC? Um, I would say so whatever I've learned, and let me tell you that I still don't know the entire thing about OKR. We all are learning, right? I would say to some extent, but what are the details of it? I think I can actually come back with a much detailed slide. I have a few slides already about mapping it to strategy map or BSC. Definitely, we can have a follow through discussion. I'll definitely keep that on my mind and come back to you, Jamila Hussain. Thanks for asking that. And please feel free to take back the questions. I mean, let the questions come in as we progress. So um, so there is so now we are kind of getting into the details a little bit, right? So if you remember, I mentioned a term saying, vision to execution, right? So OKRs, or objectives, key results, there's definitely a long term implication, right? Though that long term is never recommended beyond, let's say, 5-7 years, right? Because the business scenarios change. There has to be agility. If we stick to one objective for a long time, the key measures, right, the key result areas could could be reviewed. So it's not a very long term. But then at the same time, OKRs also help us getting down to everyday tasks and projects, right? And it's important, like we said, there's a focus on the most important things, right? So there's a lot of focus on how those short term daily elements can also be plugged into the overall framework. So Uma and me were catching up yesterday just to prepare for this, and she was briefing me on all of this. But then I think one of the stories that I love sharing here is it is so what you see on the screen, it helps create a long-term vision. That's the vision part of it, but with a direction and a short-term execution plan as well. So there's one story about, I think it's the Apollo 9 or Apollo 11 mission. All of you have heard about it, know it from NASA, right? And then there was this person in NASA who was asking a janitor. So she was walking through the corridor, and then she observed a janitor kind of sweeping the floor. She asked him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm putting man on moon." Right? Now that's what I call alignment, because next what we would start seeing is how important it is to align the strategic objectives to what even a grassroots level person is doing in the organization. Right? That's what I call alignment. So we'll come to that. So what you see here, quick detour, is when Google acquired YouTube, they actually set themselves a goal, right? Saying we would stream 1 billion hours of video. Later on, we'll see it was about learning video, and um, in a span of 24 hours, right? Uh, Now, can you imagine that, right? And that was, I think, in about 2007 or 2008. But is it achievable? When you're setting the goal, we don't know. It's too visionary, right? 1 billion hours of video streaming in 24 hours time span is definitely something which is aspirational, right? It's not a very day-to-day element. So overall, I think just keeping this thought in mind, let's take a quick walkthrough as to where all of this started. All right, so it all started from Intel, and it was implemented in first in Intel by Andy Grove. And that's what you see on the screen on the left with the person with the mustache, Andy Grove. And it was popularized by Google, right? So we see a quick timeline of how all of this started. So if you remember, the topic of today's session is to, you know, set the context, share the origin, and know, right, what OKRs are and what it really helps us doing. So it started. It goes back to, so the origin goes back to the days of management by objectives. So that's a very, very favorite question that a lot of people have, saying, what's the origin and where did it started? Is it new? Was it there earlier? So yeah, it's based on the Peter Drucker's management by objectives, and but there were certain things that Andy Grove was not very aligned to, right? And that's where he modified some of them. And I think one of the key elements, and I've been talking about it right from the beginning, right, is mapping it or linking OKRs to compensation, to target incentives, to performance, all of those elements, right? Now, there are reasons why that's done. Not that we don't want to measure performance. Measuring performance is definitely encouraged as part of the framework. So moving on, I think it got Oracle picked it up in the 80s. They did a lot of customization, structuring, restructuring, and bringing in their own elements. Google, we know, is one of the main proponents of OKRs. They started when they were 40, and even today, they follow OKR framework. And then we have the Twitters and LinkedIn, and so that's the point that I made, saying, are only IT companies using OKRs? The answer is no. So I have a very wacky kind of example right at the end. So if any question comes up, I can pick that up. But I can tell you the trainer, the master coach from the Fitbots and OKRs training. So OKRs training is an organization based out of US. They are the coaches and master coaches around OKR. So they basically brought up the point, saying, so this master coach was actually a city planning executive with the mayor's office. Now, just see the extent of the segment where this can be applied. Are you saying we can actually apply OKRs for a city planning, civic planning? The answer is yes, and I can put you in touch with him. His name is Kevin Baum. So Kevin was actually part of the city planning department in the mayor's office in his state, and he's successfully implemented OKR in his work, and now he's a full-time coach. So Tony asks, would it be possible to combine OKRs and Scrum? I think the element where both of these coincide, or the concepts coincide, and I again say that, some of these questions I would definitely love to deep dive and come back to all of you. But I think, to the extent that I'm aware, I think where it definitely aligns, the Scrum and OKR, is the agility aspect of it, right? Saying, when do we, there's a discipline to it, but Scrum is all about, breaking it down, make it, modular. In OKR, I think what I love most is how a department level OKR or an organization level OKR is broken down into department level OKRs, into team level OKRs, right? That's something I think which makes a lot of difference, because if we look at a KPI, right? KPI talks about very operational, day-to-day kind of activities, right? OKRs are different from KPIs in that essence. OKRs are aspirational. OKRs help us align with these strategic goals. KPIs don't do that always. So I have a couple of slides later, which I don't intend to cover, but I definitely would share how OKRs and KPIs, how we can relate, but still to understand what's the difference. So thanks for asking that, Tony. So here again, I think nothing very new. I think we spoke about this. So moving on. So what are some of the challenges that OKR typically tries to solve, right? And what are those elements that the organizations have faced, which they have been trying to solve through OKR implementation? It's definitely execution of the strategy, because I think Where it aligns well is, I think a lot of us do a lot of planning and strategy, right? But where it typically fails is, do we follow through? It can be as simple as setting a goal for ourselves, saying I would reduce some 10 kgs, and for myself it has been completing or running a full marathon at the end of the year, right? It could be as personal goals like those. It could be the organization strategic goals of being the largest say knowledge sharing platform in the world, or things like Microsoft, who said we want to put a desktop, we want to put a laptop on every desk, right? Or we so those are kind of strategies, but how do we really execute is something where a lot of organizations, and even at the personal level, we fail. So that's what OKR definitely attempts to solve. Engagement is definitely a key area. It helps in making new realities, right? We'll hear the story, or any of you, if you go and look up, how Google, really achieved the goal of 1 billion hours of streaming in 24 hours time frame. They actually achieved it. So the news clipping is there, so I'll share it as part of the deck. But I think things, right, disrupt the way things are happening, bring about growth. I think the biggest area that I've read about when we are covering the topic of growth is, for us, growth only could mean that we are trying to grow, get some promotions, some compensation benefits, all of those areas in terms of growth, career growth, and all of those, right? But how do we really align OKRs and strategic growth and the organization really growing in the direction of their strategic objectives? I think is something that OKRs definitely address, and that's why it's important that we de-link the compensation and the element of compensation, benefits, and performance management from the OKRs. That brings actually a lot of accountability, right? Well, people are a lot of open. We'll see how one of the actual reports or the assessment, self-assessments. I have it a few slides down. So it definitely helps us create to go from vision to execution. Now we all have been thinking or talking about, mission, vision. Now, how do we really come up with one specific objective, right? And that objective has to be it's like a overall objective, right? So this is a guiding statement that is there, right? If you try to bundle all your mission, vision into one and come up with one statement, right? Why do you do what you do, right? Could be one of the directions that we have when we are trying to come up with a key objective, or the objective. Moving on, I think it's actually the aspirational core purpose, right? Google has its objective as to give humanity access to all the world's information. Now that's where it's immensely aspirational, right? But that's the core purpose. That's what drives them. Acquisition of YouTube was one of the decisions in that journey, in that aspirational journey, right? Because they knew that Chrome, which is still the largest used browser, was not enough. Many of you might know that Chrome is the most used browser. The next highly used browser is actually YouTube. So YouTube has become a search engine, right? And Microsoft, though they have achieved their vision or their objective of getting a laptop on every desk, still Microsoft Internet Explorer is not the second most used, or not even the most used, not even the second most used search engine, right? So we'll see how each of these organizations have gone through. But this is a particular organization from where I take a lot of cue. This is headed by a person called Vishen Lakhani, very clear in terms uh, of explaining OKRs. And there's a small video clipping that I have towards the end. But I think that's a company called Mind Valley. They have implemented OKR in their organization. So let's come back to a little bit of definitions, right? So objective, how do we frame the objective, right? So what do we, it's that what do we want to achieve, right? So it's a broad statement, qualitative, and we don't come to the key result or the measures yet, right? It's the broad qualitative goal, right? And what is the direction, the, you know, what we want to achieve? What is the framework? What is the, how do we really frame, right? If you see this part, it says it should come, it would start with the verb, right? And it should go on to say, okay, what are you trying to achieve? And then say, what does it really get you, right? So if you see this example saying, and these are some of the actual ones without the company name or the organization name being given out. So it says, okay, we want to ensure we implement the right SEO, search engine optimization strategy, in order to drive quality leads, right, into the organization's website. So that's what can be one of the objectives, right? I have a few objective examples as we progress, but this is what I want to quickly cover before I move on. So the verb is, so that's what you saw. And then we see here, what are the key results? So if we consider implementing SEO strategy in order to drive qualified leads into the website is a objective we are trying to achieve, then what are the key results that will really qualify, saying, okay, we achieved the objective. So it could be increasing the traffic. So more leads have to come in, because that's anyways what we are trying to do. And then are the leads really getting converted from some, based on some parameters, is could be a second key result area. So one, the leads have to come in through some other parameters. And then when the leads come in, do we really take them to the second level? So these could be the two result areas that we are, that we see, right? And now, how would the leads come in, right? Do we have to do something, right? So what do we do? First of all, if you see the first key result area, it could be, you know, go ahead and talk more, right? Pay more, campaign, bring up more campaign, paid campaign ads. Go and get people to speak about your platform organically, right? So so it has to be, then it comes down to what exactly you do or we do in each of these activities, which will help qualified leads to come in, which will help us, or which will prove that we implemented the right SEO strategy, right? So there's this hierarchy, and that's how I think it becomes very important. And later in one of the examples, we'll see, okay, so these are again some examples of objectives, and then how each of those objectives can be broken down into the key results. And the key results, we'll come to that, has to be measurable, right? There has to be some matrix to it. So let's quickly get to that. So the key